There's always something that needs a little fixing on Far Point Farms.
Hey guys, it's Eric, owner of Far Point Farms, restorations and repairs here in the mountains of North Carolina. And tonight, I figured it was time, since it's been a little over 3 years now, to do a very long-term follow-up video on this. This is a Harbor Freight scissor lift. It is item number 91315. Currently, it's not listed on Harbor Freight's website. However, if you call them, they will tell you that they do have plans to bring this lift back. There won't be any changes to it. And the reason that it's not currently on the site is because it's currently just not available. There are issues with getting supplies, and some of those issues have led to Harbor Freight dropping a lot of their really popular products. You might be able to see those two side cabinets for the toolbox I have there are also not currently listed on their site, but will be shortly. So that is why I'm making this review, is because this is going to come back. And after 3 years, I'd like to talk about how I've really enjoyed having this thing. It's a good lift. It's a mid-rise lift. There are some things it cannot do, and mainly that is rear-wheel drive or four-wheel drive transmission work. You just can't get the transmission out with the bracing that's in the middle here. But I have taken engines out, and here's a video of me dropping an engine out of a pickup truck here that was front-wheel drive. And I've certainly done transmission work on front-wheel drive vehicles as well with this. You can do CV joints, you can do struts, you can do brakes, you can do tires, you can do exhaust work, as I've shown here. Here's some work welding on the exhaust. And so there are a lot of things you can do with this. A lot of the negative criticism I heard about this when I was researching buying one of these back in the day was that, oh, you know, it's only for like wheel service work. You can't do anything else with these. These things are useless, or they're inherently dangerous. Well, I worked on about 200, maybe 300 cars with this thing over the last 3.5 years, and I can tell you that I'm still alive, at least I feel like I am, and that this is not any more dangerous than any other automotive lift you're going to come across, whether it's a 4-post, a 2-post, asymmetrical or symmetrical. It doesn't matter. A lift is going to have some danger involved in using it, but if you follow the rules of making sure you balance your load, you follow the weight requirements that this has, which is 6,000 pounds, which is plenty. I've lifted, half-ton trucks with this, no problem, because they were under the limit. Now, I'm not going to go lift an F-350 Super Duty, extended cab, or quad cab or whatnot. But overall, in 3.5 years, and I bought the extended warranty. So when I bought this thing, and I'll take this camera off here in a second and show you around, show you how well it's held up. When I bought this, I paid $1,399. Last time I saw it listed on their site, I think it was going for $1,699. But I paid $1,399. That included, I paid for the lift, I paid for liftgate delivery service, and I paid for a 3-year extended warranty. In the 3 years that I owned it while I was under warranty, lots of use, never had to use the warranty. So that's a good sign right off the bat. I was worried about hydraulic cylinders. This is, it's Chinese made or whatnot. It's the same factory that's pumping out Atlas lifts and Benpack lifts and any other name brand you can think of. If it looks like this, it probably was made at the same factory as this. In fact, the time that I'm filming this, right at the beginning of 2022, I can tell you that Benpack is currently out of stock and not expected to be in stock until middle of the year. Gee, I wonder if maybe it's because it's coming out of the same factory and they also can't get the parts they need to build theirs. You can do the math on that yourself. As far as the lift goes, yeah, there are some really wide modern cars. I lifted a Toyota Sienna minivan in here, and it was a little hard to get it on the pinch rails, but there's also backup places that you can lift these from, and that's exactly what I've done. So of all the cars I worked on, there was a Sienna van and a full-size Tundra that I worked on here, and both of those I wasn't able to get really good locations where manufacturer says, hey, these are the lift points we want you to use. What I was able to do, though, is find really solid secondary points. In the Tundra, in the rear, I lifted it by the rear axle, and on the front, I lifted it by the control arms, and everything went beautifully instead of lifting it directly from the frame. Now, you can get risers for these. I have a set of those somewhere around here, and that helps as well for lifting framed vehicles. But for unibody stuff, usually this is just right. So let me go ahead. I'll take the camera off the tripod, we'll walk around, and I'll show you. I haven't cleaned it. Last time, the 1 year, I cleaned it and made it look like the thing had never been used, really, because I just undercoated the car and I wanted to get all the paint off of it. After 3 years, she's got some scratches. The paint's not perfect anymore, but there's no rust. There's no cracking. There's no fatigue that I can see anywhere in the system. Cylinders are holding up well. The pumps hold up well. Let's take a look. I guess we'll start over here where the toolbox is, because over here in the corner is where I have the pump and the hydraulic reservoir. And there's not a whole lot to report on that. It works. I have it wired directly to a 220 grounded outlet right there. There's 220. And it's its own circuit. It does recommend its own circuit. And she does draw some power. The lights will dim when I activate this thing, but that's okay. It does what it's supposed to do. The two cables, the first one's the hydraulic line. The second one is the safety lock release. And then I've got this metal bar that I found we were throwing out. And I've got that hooked up so I can roll stuff over it without having a problem. And here we are. You can see, it's funny. If you go back to the very first video I posted on this thing, I had used, my floor is not perfectly level. So I had used some shims to shore things up. And it was supposed to be just temporary. 3.5 years in, and my temporary fix is still working just fine, so no need to fix what ain't broke, if you know what I mean. Hoses, yeah, you know, you think, well, I don't know, it's Chinese made, but there you go. So is Benpack, so is Atlas, so is every other brand of mid-rise lift you're going to come across, and as a result, everything has held up really, really well. The hoses have held up well. I haven't had any issues with leakage, no rust forming on any of those parts. Here is our safety lock. And you can see the tabs there for the safeties. This one I think has 5 positions. Some of the other models out there that are identical to this, mostly identical, will only have 2 or 3 positions. I like being able to stop this at various places so it's comfortable height for me to work at. The cylinders, yeah, they're in great shape. Take a look. No leakage, just that light film oil we're looking for. Maintenance-wise, I haven't changed the fluid on this. I have cleaned it many times over the years, but obviously I haven't cleaned it lately. The pivot pins, everything there, no damage whatsoever. No signs of wear, really. I mean, nothing. Now, there's no lube points on those, which I was a little bit worried about, but I guess the amount of time that these pivot points pivot, when you think about it, is just not all that great. Now, you can see up here, the paint has actually really held up fairly well. There are some spots here where, you know, sliding this in and out has caused the scratching to occur, but that's to be expected. What hasn't happened is no bubbling, no flaking, no massive rust pockets popping up. And any rust that does come up on this thing is just mere surface rust from working on salty cars. Down here in the rear, everything's looking good too. This is our major pivot point, also one of the biggest points of pressure on the unit when it's up in the air. And they're fine, they're not having any problems with those. Here along the back, you can see the steel rollers, no issues there. I mean, ton of weight. You know, 4,000 or 5,000 pound car, 4,000 or 5,000 pounds worth of weight on those 2 rollers. The pins are fine. They still roll smoothly. Haven't had any issues at all. So really happy with that. Even up underneath here, if you look, no damage to any components here. No serious rust. A lot of times when there's not a car on here, this is sitting inches off a very damp ground, and haven't had any problems with that. So real happy with that. Up top here, these are still holding up really well. The pads, I mean, there's a little bit of damage here, but I mean, considering how many times I've lifted a car on these pads, not bad, just minor damage. Over here, same situation. The pins are holding up really well. No damage to the pin here, no damage inside. You can see the snap ring there is holding up fine. These bracing, I mean, people were complaining when I was researching these that the welds weren't fair, that they weren't high quality welds. I mean, they look fine to me. And there's the model number and all the information on it. They do offer some. There were some that were sold that were 120. Can't speak to those, but these 220 units, I mean, it lifts and lowers just fine. Slow to lower without a load on it, so having it up like this is extended. So there it is. So I don't know what it's going to come back price-wise. Obviously, the beginning of 2022, everything has gotten considerably more expensive, and that includes stuff from Harbor Freight. I'm a fan of Harbor Freight overall. Some of their stuff, I'm upset that it's gone up in price, but I understand that, you know, the dollar's just not worth $1 anymore. And that's really not Harbor Freight's fault. I would imagine when these come back on the market, they'll be at the $2,000 range, to be quite honest with you. But you might still be able to use a 20% coupon or Inside Track Club and get a discount on that. And for that price, I would say that it's worth it. And here's why. So here's why I say it is worth it. The reason I say that this thing is still worth it at $2,000, and that's the kind of price range you get into where you start looking at 2-post or even 4-post lifts, is for the ability to use this in any standard garage. If I wanted to put a 2-post, which is what I initially was going to do when we started working out of this garage, I did not know the tensile strength or the depth of this concrete. And I doubt that it goes the depth that is required or has the tensile strength that is required to safely install a 2-post or even a 4-post lift. Can you get away with using less than 6 inches or 8 inches of concrete on a 2-post lift? Sure. You can also get crushed to death when you find out that you didn't get away with it. Or you can destroy a car doing so, right? So when I looked into it, I kept thinking about it. Okay, here's how much it's going to cost for the 2-post lift. Here's how much it's going to cost for me to cut out 2 pads, 2x2 pads, to dig that area out, to pour concrete, to wait the 30 to 60 days for it to cure properly, and then to install the 2-post lift. When I did that, I kept going over and over in my mind about, well, it's going to cost this, it's going to take this amount of time. And every time I got to a certain point, I just said, you know what, forget it. I'll just do with jack stands and a jack for right now, or drive on ramps. Finally, I realized that there was a reason why I hadn't bought it, is because it just wasn't worth it. This mid-rise, yeah, it might cost a few $100 or equal to what a 2-post costs, but this is something that you can wheel right off the truck, right onto the floor, and get to work the same day. Worst case scenario, you have to add a 220 line somewhere in your garage. That's not bad, right? That is pretty nice, actually. So that is why I still recommend these. I plan on having this for life. I think when I made the 1-year review, I actually was considering buying a second one so that I could work on a restoration project and customer cars at the same time. I haven't done that. I've made do with one, and I probably will at this point continue to make do with just the one. But it has saved my back so much trouble and so much effort, and it has made so much of the stuff that I do here so much easier that I can't say that I can't recommend it any more than I already do. It is just an awesome product. Anyway, that'll do it for today. I'm Eric, the owner of Farpoint Farms Restorations and Repairs. Hope you liked the video. If you did, perhaps you'll think about liking and subscribing. And I'll see you next time. Take care.